Hello, everybody. This is ChasingCinema.com's official podcast, and today we have a special guest for you. Unlike our usual common spiel where I would say, I'm your co-host, my name is Jacob Toronto, and you heard Louis say his spiel, it's not Louis today. Today we have a guest that has been on the podcast quite a few times, and I hope he keeps coming back because he is an awesome guy and a great movie critic. We have Josh Bell from Las Vegas Weekly. Sir, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. Very glad you could join us. So today, me and Josh are going to talk about some movie news. We're going to talk about a local film festival that happened. And then we're going to end our podcast by reviewing The Book of Life and Fury. So let's hop right into it. Josh, I know you are doing a lot of stuff for the Weekly, including are you covering Polygrind for the Weekly?
Yes, I am. I was at the Polygrind Film Festival for the last few days. It was this week on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So, yes, I will have an article wrapping up the whole event in the next Las Vegas Weekly, and that's what's been consuming my time and my movie-watching attention for the last several days, pretty much.
All right, awesome. So everyone keep your eyes out for that article up and coming. But Josh, for here on all of the ChasingCinema.com listeners and Josh Bell fans, talk about some stuff that you've been watching, or some interesting stuff. Was it all good? Was it all bad? How was it at Polygrind this year?
Well, it's always interesting at Polygrind. I don't know. I guess you probably have never been to the festival before.
I've not, but I've heard lots of things. I heard it's a very underground festival.
Yes, it's extremely underground. And the thing about Polygrind this year was that it almost didn't happen. That Chad Freeman, the guy who runs the festival, had booked it for the Cinemark theaters at the South Point and was all set for there. It was exciting because that was the first time the festival was going to be in a real movie theater. For the last few years, it had been at Theater 7 downtown, which was kind of this small little screening room, which is now closed. So that was a cool step up for the festival. But at the last minute, about a week before the festival was supposed to start, Cinemark contacted Chad and told him they needed to approve of all the movies he was showing. And so he was scrambling to get screeners from all the filmmakers that had submitted and send them on to Cinemark. But after viewing just one or two things, I think they decided that the content was too extreme for them.
Oh, wow.
Which was a little unfair because he had already paid to book this theater and suddenly they're pulling it. So he had to scramble at the last minute to put together venues, and a lot of the films that were originally set to show got pulled for various reasons. Filmmakers weren't sure about the scheduling, or they didn't want to come into town. And so the festival was kind of haphazard this year. And it's always a little haphazard. I mean, there's a schedule, but you kind of show up and you hope that they're showing what they're supposed to be showing at the time that you get there. So this year was definitely more unpredictable than usual. But the first day of the festival on Thursday was really cool. For that day, Chad was able to book the Galaxy Theater, the luxury theater in Henderson, which, if you've ever been there, is a really nice fancy theater with the reclining chairs and huge floor-to-ceiling screen. It's very, very comfortable.
Yes, very.
Yes. So seeing the Polygrind movies there was really exciting. And it also forced them to keep to the schedule because he had rented the theater for a specific amount of time, which was nice. So there were a few movies on Thursday that were pretty cool. Chad's own favorite movie of the festival, which is an Australian dark comedy called Chocolate, Strawberry, Vanilla, kind of a taxi driver-ish thing about this ice cream man who's obsessed with a soap star. That played on Thursday, and that was interesting. I wasn't crazy about it, but it had a strong performance from the main actor as this kind of obsessive loser, and it went totally crazy in the last act, but it didn't really build as much as I would have liked it to. But the one movie I really liked on Thursday, and really for the whole festival, was a documentary called Rebel Scum, about a punk band in Knoxville, Tennessee called the Dirty Works. Not a famous band at all, but it was a really fascinating, intimate documentary about these incredibly self-destructive guys who have all sorts of problems, and they're drug addicts and they're alcoholics, and the lead singer will beat himself bloody, literally, on stage when they perform. He's pounding himself in the head with a microphone, and it's extreme and dark, but it was a fascinating human story. So the thing with movies at Polygrind is that you never know where they're ever going to show again. So hopefully this is a movie that will make it beyond Polygrind and that people will be able to see, because I think fans of rock documentaries will definitely like this movie. Yeah, I think so. It's a really interesting story. So that's called Rebel Scum.
Rebel Scum. Okay. Did you think there was I understand this is probably one of the movies you enjoyed the most, but do you think there was a movie you saw at Polygrind that probably will, how do I say, just will probably be the one to actually make it out of, the small festival circuit and kind of get more attention? Was there a movie that you said this one's probably going to get a little bit more attention, maybe on Netflix or something like that?
It's possible. I mean, a lot of the stuff that Polygrind shows is really super weird. And so even if it gets distribution, and actually Chad is really proud of the fact that a lot of the movies he's shown over the years have gotten distribution, but it's usually really small, genre labels. But there was a movie that I saw also on Thursday that's actually a local production. It's a found footage horror movie called Heidi. And that for a local Las Vegas made movie had really strong production values and really good acting, which is rare, although it's becoming less rare, which is nice. It was a little familiar and predictable. If you've ever seen a found footage horror movie, it went through a lot of the same kind of beats as something like Paranormal Activity, and I thought it dragged at the end, but it was formulaic in a good way, in that I could see that horror fans and people who like that kind of movie would enjoy it. And so I could absolutely see a small horror label picking it up and maybe getting it on demand and through Netflix and stuff like that. And I think it would be great for a local production to get to that level. So I hope those people achieve success. The movie called Heidi that I think could make it.
Was that a UNLV or just a local Vegas production? Do you know?
I mean, it's possible some of the people may have come out of UNLV.
Okay.
There wasn't anyone involved that I know, or that that I've seen their work before. The director is a guy named Daniel Ray, who is, I think, the writer and director. So I don't know, but it's definitely a full-on feature film. It's feature length. Like I said, it had some good production values, special effects, and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think it was a student production, but it's possible some of the people, I mean, in Vegas, anyone involved in filmmaking, it's likely that someone has come out of UNLV.
Right. So, well, just an interesting little question here to kind of veer off. We are about a week or two away from Halloween, and it is time for the horror movies. And did you point out Heidi? Is there a horror movie that you watch every year? Do you have any particular favorites that you like revisiting around Halloween, or just one in particular that you watch whenever? Like, what are some of your favorite horror films?
Well, I don't know if I have one that I watch every year, but I do have favorites, certainly. And then the last few years, in October, I think not last year because I was doing something else, but this year I do have something coming up on my blog, my joshbellhateseverything.com page, which not a lot of people visit. But if you want to go there, you can see this year I did do a series, or I will have a series of entries on the entire Chucky series, which is definitely one of my favorites, the Child's Play series. It's an up and down, but I really like the character of Chucky. So that's something I'm doing this year. And in the past, I've gone through the whole Halloween series and the whole Hellraiser series. And those series are much less consistent. Yeah. But the original Halloween, the original John Carpenter Halloween is fantastic. That's a great film that I've seen a number of times. And the first two Hellraisers are really good, I would say. And also not something that I've written about recently, but the original Nightmare on Elm Street is a fantastic film. That's a favorite of mine as well. And I might as well get in a plug. I'm actually hosting a horror movie showing at Elixir in Henderson, the bar Elixir, on October 27th, showing Night of the Living Dead, which is, of course, one of the greatest horror movies ever made. So I'll plug that one as well.
All right, wonderful. And again, that is joshbellhateseverything.com. You can go there and find, I know he has other, I don't know if, I guess you call them series, but he also does things like Christmas in July, and he's going to be doing, as he said, hopefully something like Child's Play or other horror films. joshbellhateseverything.com or facebook.com/joshbellhateseverything. And again, October 27th at Elixir, you can find Josh Bell hosting the screening of Night of the Living Dead. So that'll be very fun. I might have to attend that. I didn't know you were doing that.
Yeah, it's hopefully it'll be fun. It's at midnight on a Monday though, so we'll see how many people show up.
Gotcha. So just really quick, I hope I don't want to get all your answers out ahead of time, but just really quick before I move on, did you like the latest Chucky film, Curse of Chucky, I believe the title was?
I did like Curse of Chucky. Yeah, you can of course read more when I write about it, but it's a return. It's a return to the darker horror roots after the highly campy comedic previous entries, and I thought it was actually really quite effective for the sixth movie in a series that didn't even make it to theaters. It's a surprisingly decent movie.
Yes, and to kind of veer off that, did you enjoy the Leprechaun series, and have you seen Leprechaun Origins?
I actually did one of these series on the Leprechaun movies.
All right, wonderful.
So you can check that out on my website from a few years ago. I've not seen Leprechaun Origins yet, and I'm disappointed that Warwick Davis is not involved. The Leprechaun series is not good by really any stretch of the imagination, but it's fun to watch, and I think Warwick Davis is a big reason for that. So I'm disappointed that he's not involved in this new one. Did you see it?
I did, and that is going to be the movie I'm going to be talking about.
Oh, all right.
But to say like I take great pride in owning Leprechaun Lost in Space. I think there's something so great and campy about that movie. But I actually own the whole franchise. They actually just got re-released on Blu-ray in a whole series. And as you said, Warwick Davis does so good in that movie, in the whole series, even though the movies are like just get atrociously bad and crazy and campy. I still enjoy them and think they're quite fun as you do. However, Leprechaun Origins, which I guess you could say was kind of resurrected by WWE Studios and casted a wrestler by the name of Hornswoggle as Leprechaun, who actually in the wrestling of WWE, the show, plays a leprechaun, a much nicer, funnier leprechaun. So I was, as me and Josh just talked about, as you could hear, I am really into the whole Leprechaun series, so I was quite excited that they were doing another one. But as, like Josh, I was also very disappointed that Warwick Davis wasn't going to be reprising his role. I saw some trailers for the film, and I noticed they were really good at not showing Leprechaun. I wasn't sure if they were going to change his look, or if, they just wanted to kind of really build the suspense of seeing him again after so long, even though this is more of an origin story, which I'll get into in a second. But the most important thing I was excited for, just to kind of see him. And Leprechaun Origins was a really big disappointment. It didn't go to, it was a straight to video. I believe it's on, you can find that on Redbox and on demand already. But they kind of changed the entire outlook of what Leprechaun is. So the fact they call it an Origins, as in I took it as a prequel to the Leprechaun series, it's definitely not the same Leprechaun. I would say it was a different Leprechaun story. Like there are multiple Leprechauns. This is a different type, a breed or something, because it looks nothing like what we know Warwick Davis to be. He doesn't wear clothes. He's just a really scary alien type looking creature.
He doesn't wear clothes? Is he a naked leprechaun?
He's a naked little, it looks like a baby alien, if you will.
Oh.
And then it's not really so much about the gold as he needs to feed type thing. And I just thought it was just kind of way different and just it seemed it was one of those movies where it kind of used the name to create this new type of story that didn't really connect back to the original classics and didn't really give me that whole connection. And granted, if it was a more entertaining and unpredictable and creative horror film, it would have been, I wouldn't have been so upset with it because they went away from it. Because usually if you remake or reboot or try to do a series that is found a cult following, the best bet is to always go farthest away from it as possible, because if you try to recreate, fans usually get upset. But they didn't. They were really just as predictable as possible. They were like, let's make the most generic horror film and we'll put Leprechaun's name on it and see what we can do. I just the way the characters were really uninteresting. The way that they were showing how this creature was killing people, it just seemed really, really, just really odd, and just the way you would go about thinking how a leprechaun would kill somebody, as you would learn from all the other Leprechaun movies. It's just not the same. It just does not feel like it's in the same context, and it was just a really, really odd viewing, and I was really disappointed by it.
That is very sad. Although one thing I noticed watching the whole Leprechaun series back to back to back is that there is zero continuity in that series. And in every movie, they kind of change what the Leprechaun's goal is and how his powers work and how he kills people. So in a way, having a Leprechaun movie that has nothing to do with the previous Leprechaun movies continues the tradition of the previous Leprechaun movies.
This is actually really true because I also watched it in continual order. And there was one, in Space, the one I talked about earlier, he needs to marry a bride. And they all have different they are really kind of, really not similar in the sense of the goals. So I guess that makes a point, but this one just feels way off.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have any desire to watch the new one. Unlike say the Chucky series, where I was excited to see where they took it, and Chucky is full of continuity, which is I think one of the great things about that series is that Don Mancini, who created Chucky, has worked on every single movie in the whole series, so it really has a consistency to it that most horror series do not have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really, really surprised with Curse of Chucky. Again, we won't talk about it too much because I know you want people to go to joshbellhateseverything.com to read about the whole series. But I was genuinely surprised and very happy with that kind of return to more of a serious type horror, and it didn't feel like they overused the special effects as you would think that'd be the way to go. Though there is more special effects than probably the older Chuckies, it still feels like it kind of holds that tradition and tries to be in the same realm, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I thought it was good. In fact, I thought the least successful part of Curse of Chucky was sort of the final act where they bring in a lot of the familiar elements from the previous films, which I think for fans may be as exciting because you realize, oh, hey, look, it's that character and this thing connects to that thing. But it sort of felt like it didn't arise from the more serious, dark first like 2/3 of the movie. But overall, I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to hopefully Don Mancini getting a chance to make another one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I did have some kind of issues with the ending, but we won't get into that because I know you're going to talk a lot about it. We'll have to talk about that on a personal note. But
okay.
I mean, yeah, I definitely had some issues with the ending, but I definitely enjoyed watching Chucky come back to the screen. When they made Freddy vs. Jason, I always said the go-to next movie would be Chucky vs. Leprechaun. That's the movie I want to see.
Yeah, there's a lot of fan art. I remember when I was writing about the Leprechaun series, again, it was a few years ago, and I was looking stuff up about whether they were going to make another one, and this was before they had announced the Origins movie. You look up Leprechaun next movie or something like that, and there's tons and tons of fan art about Leprechaun versus Chucky, which of course has never happened or even been remotely close to happening, but people really want it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we wrap up that, we're going to move on to some movie news. Not too much because, as everyone here knows, Louis is the movie news guru. But I'm going to talk about a few things that we were talking about earlier this week when I spoke to Louis on the phone. So he gave us our movie news by way of telephone earlier today, and we're going to talk about some of the things. The first thing I actually want to talk about with Josh, it might not be the newest movie news, but I just want to kind of hear his opinions and thoughts on it. First, Josh, how big of a fan of Ghostbusters are you? Are you a diehard fan? Do you own a Ghostbusters shirt? How big of a fan of Ghostbusters are you?
No, I mean, despite coming from the generation that is apparently obsessed with Ghostbusters, I am really indifferent to Ghostbusters. I think I saw both Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2 when I was a kid, and I sort of liked them fine. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen either of them in 20 years or more and have had no desire to revisit them. So I have really no opinion on Ghostbusters.
Okay, so do you have an opinion on them rebooting it with an all-female cast? What are your thoughts? Because as we were talking about, sometimes the best thing to do about a reboot is to go far away from the original as possible. I wanted to know your opinion on them doing Ghostbusters with an all-female cast. And the director is Paul Feig, who did Bridesmaids, and I believe the writer of The Heat is attached as well. So what are your thoughts on that, if any?
Well, I agree with you that the best thing for them to do with this franchise, if they're going to have to resurrect it and they won't let it die, the best thing is to do something new, because I think it's really disappointing with all these big franchises, whether it's Ghostbusters or Indiana Jones or any of those, that people have this strong nostalgia for, and 20, 30 years later they're saying, oh, we want to make a sequel, we want to trot out all these characters again and continue this story, and that's inevitably disappointing. So if you have to use the Ghostbusters brand because it's recognizable and Hollywood studios are obsessed with recognizable brands, you might as well leave the stuff that was in the past, leave it in the past, and start over, tell a new story. I think the female cast is yet another way to break away from what the previous movies were like. And I think it's really going to depend on the casting. It's going to depend on the writing. But I enjoyed The Heat, which Paul Feig was also the director of that, I believe. And so having him along with that writer involved, I think is a good step forward. And hopefully they'll be able to recruit some actresses who are funny and talented, and they'll make a good movie. I am more interested in seeing this than I would be in seeing Ghostbusters 3 with Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson and maybe Bill Murray, like reluctantly thrown in front of the camera to play these characters again.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. As they kept talking about it they've been talking about Ghostbusters 3 forever, and to think that, instead of seeing something that just might seem like they're trying, they're back, they're putting on the suits again, and it just feels a little bit, kind of like an Expendable type thing where you're just like, they're doing it again. You have this and surprisingly, as Bill Murray even pointed out, it is a really great time for female comedians. I mean, look at the cast of Bridesmaids, and even The Heat with Sandra Bullock included, with Melissa McCarthy and Kristen Wiig and Maya Rudolph. You have a great selection of female comedians that I think could really do well in this movie, especially Melissa McCarthy, especially Kristen Wiig. I don't know if Sandra Bullock would be interested. I don't know if he's going to go to his familiar casting types from those two movies, but I'm very interested, and I think it is a great time for female comedians. And, to think that, Tina Fey and Melissa McCarthy or Kristen Wiig would be in this movie, that excites me more than seeing Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even if it was not an all-female cast, just the fact that they're going to bring in new people instead of trotting out the old characters, I think that's the best way to approach this.
Absolutely. But talking about reboots, they have announced that they're going to be rebooting Green Lantern for 2020, which is quite a ways away, but yes, it'll be here before you know it. But what do you think about that? Did you enjoy the Green Lantern film? What were your thoughts, and what do you think about the reboot?
Well, I mean, this reboot is part of this whole huge announcement that Warner Brothers put out about all these DC Comics based films. And so I think by the time we get to 2020, assuming they stick with this plan, by the time we get to 2020 and we have a Green Lantern movie, it'll be an outgrowth of all these movies that they have planned before then. The Batman versus Superman that's coming up. They've got 2 Justice League movies. You got Wonder Woman, you got The Flash. I forget Shazam, a ridiculous number of movies. So to me, it's sort of hard to say by itself, what kind of anticipation would I have for a Green Lantern movie? Because it's like saying, what is your anticipation for, 5 Marvel movies away? Well, it's really, because these movies depend on each other so much, it's really dependent on how those movies turn out. I think overall, the plan for this DC cinematic universe, I have zero interest in, because I think I've enjoyed a lot of the Marvel movies, and I think Marvel has done a great job of building this universe of films that work together. But I think copying it and setting out to copy it is a recipe for disaster. And I'm not really excited about any of the talent that DC has recruited so far. I didn't like Man of Steel. I don't like Zack Snyder, who's got 3 of these movies he's signed on to direct. I'm not particularly excited about David Ayer, who we'll talk about a little later, who's been signed to direct the Suicide Squad movie. So overall, this whole DC announcement just makes me weary of the fact that I'm going to have to sit through all of these movies over the next 6 years. But maybe you are more excited. As I've said many times on this podcast, you might not have heard, but I mean, if there's any superhero thing that gets me excited, it is a Batman deal. I mean, I used to be a comic book fan, but I kind of, as I've gotten older, I've just kind of narrowed my selection down to all Batman type stuff. But it's kind of, I would like to talk to you about this really quick to kind of get off movie news for 1 second, and get your opinions on 2 things, because I might see you once or twice a week at screenings, things like that, but we rarely get a chance to actually sit and just kind of talk about certain things. Number one, so do you think DC is making a mistake by throwing in all these characters in, Superman versus Batman already, because it's a little bit too early and premature and they're not taking their time like Marvel did? Or do you think that, it's as you said, you already said you kind of think it's going to be a disaster, but do you think it's because they're jumping in so soon, or just do you think it's not going to just work out as they're imagining? Yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely biting off more than they can chew. And like I said, I think planning this out, not that Marvel doesn't plan these things out, but when Marvel first started, it was, hey, let's make a movie about Iron Man and see how that goes. And then that was very successful. And then they were able to kind of build from there. But to announce already that we have, with 9 or 10 or however many movies coming out over the next 6 years, I think is a folly. And I also think that one gigantic cinematic superhero universe is more than enough. And so, no, I mean, I really don't think anything, like I said, I don't think anything about this whole DC plan is exciting or interesting. I'm not excited about the people that they've got involved in planning it. And I think that people are excited about the Marvel movies, and it's going to be hard to get them as excited about yet another string of giant blockbuster superhero movies. And I think this could also hurt Marvel, that people will get tired of so many of these movies being thrown at them, going from 1 or 2 a year to 4 or 5 a year. And I think it's possible that this whole bubble will burst, which is why I say it's hard to comment on Green Lantern, because I think it's entirely possible that by 2020, there won't even be a Green Lantern movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of talk about that is another thing I wanted to bring up, unless you have any other points to go off of.
No, that's fine, please.
Because I know we probably could go all day. Even and to kind of go off your point, I read that Robert Downey Jr. even said recently, like, the whole superhero movie is kind of getting old already. And me and Lou have talked about this before. I even kind of feel that, as much as Marvel has put out a lot of good movies, and a lot of great movies, I kind of have been like, every movie news, there's no such thing as movie news without superhero, attachments, Marvel, DC. I mean, I have a whole list right here, and I think there's only one on here that are not related to comic books. Do you feel that the comic book movie has kind of wore out its welcome already, or are you still enjoying it and wanting to see what's coming out more, or are you kind of like, I wish there'd be some more stuff? Because it does feel, a lot. It does feel like there's the majority of the content that we see in the theaters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm tired of it, and I say that as someone who goes to the comic book store almost every week, and thoroughly enjoys reading comic books, although not that many superhero comic books these days. But yeah, I do think it's gotten tired, and that doesn't mean I still won't enjoy some of the movies. I mean, I thought Guardians of the Galaxy was very good, and I wouldn't want to say, I wish that movie hadn't been made, because I enjoyed it very much. But I do think, especially as more people jump into these things, that and in a way, I think it's not even as much about movies featuring superheroes or movies based on comic books, but this whole idea of this superhero universe, of the cinematic universe, that every movie is just a big, like a chunk of this larger, never-ending story that we're dealing with Marvel movies, and now we're going to deal with in the DC movies, and that we're dealing with in the X-Men movies that spin off from each other. And, Fox has announced more. There's a Deadpool movie, and there's another X-Men movie coming that Sony is trying to do with the Spider-Man movies, although they seem to have failed with that. Or even that Universal is doing with these stupid monster movies.
That was going to be the next thing I brought up to you about the whole universe. So I'm glad you kind of touched on that. So go on.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that in a way is what is more tiring than just the fact that there are so many superhero movies, is that all of these movies are just these
stepping stones.
Stories, yeah, there's just stepping stones to the next movie. There's stories that never end, which is immensely dissatisfying after a while. And I think what I would have loved to see with DC is for them to look at Marvel, and instead of saying, hey, Marvel's done really well with what they're doing, we want to copy them and do exactly the same thing, would be instead to go in the opposite direction and say, we think our characters are great, and we want to hire talented writers and directors and actors and give them the freedom to make the movies about these characters the way they want without having to be beholden to connecting everything together. I think that's one of the reasons that Christopher Nolan's Batman movies were so successful. And I don't even really like the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, but I wouldn't deny that they're they're a unique artistic vision of his. And I think if Christopher Nolan had been stuck in the position of making those movies and having to connect them to a Justice League movie and a Superman movie and a Wonder Woman movie, they wouldn't have been nearly as enjoyable, and they wouldn't have reached the kind of fan base that they reached. So I think it's super disappointing that DC has decided the way to go is to copy exactly what Marvel does. Yeah,
I totally agree with you, and I just feel like the whole universe thing is just poisoned because, I mean, granted, and as me and Josh both have stated, you cannot. What Marvel did is amazing. You cannot discredit them for what they've done and how they created their films. But at times, that does not mean it's going to work for every movie universe. I mean, the Universal movie monster universe thing, to me, it sounds ridiculous. First of all, because I really dislike Jekyll and Told and I Frankenstein, and I don't know if that was included, but
no, I think that was not part of it. There's going to be a different Frankenstein that's coming up.
Of course. And but I mean, I even heard that they were talking about doing a Robin Hood universe where every character was going to get their own movie. And if that is something. The fact that is something, there's a problem because every studio and every idea is going to say, let's make it a universe. And that kind of, as you pointed out as well, kind of worries me in the sense that then we're going to forget that a story could be told in 2 hours, in 1 hour and a half. We don't need it to be 10 movies. And the fact that Robin Hood universe is one of the first or the earlier ideas for this universe type movie releases is a big warning. Like, okay, this is already how it's going bad. If that doesn't say this is not going to be good, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I know. I agree, and I hope. I mean, not that I want to wish things to fail, but I really hope this whole universe thing kind of crashes and burns.
Yeah.
And that maybe Marvel can come out of it still successful because they're the ones who are the best at it and originated it. But honestly, even if it killed the Marvel universe too, that would be okay with me.
I have to agree with you. It's just so everyone can kind of learn a lesson and say, all right, let's not do that again.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, very interesting. I'm glad we finally got to talk about that. Moving on to, guess what? Some comic book movie news. I think this is going to be. I think this is hopefully going to happen. As many people knowing I'm a huge Batman fan, have talked to me about Batman vs Superman and the idea of a Robin character. They have talked about that there's going to be a female Robin. I don't think it's been confirmed, but they've been talking about a female Robin in Batman vs Superman film. They're talking with Jenna Malone, who was in The Hunger Games, Catching Fire. Do you think we need a Robin in the Batman Superman film, or do you think it's another character that's going to be thrown in this mix? And, what are your thoughts on this?
I have no thoughts on this, to be perfectly honest. I do not care one way or the other. It does seem like they're throwing a million characters in. But I mean, certainly Robin is a more relevant character for a movie about Batman than Wonder Woman is, or Aquaman or whatever. But honestly, it makes it like I can't imagine a single thing that they could announce about this movie that would make me interested.
It's so funny because as me and Louis sit here, every week and talk about movie news, he'll always come at me with some other superhero character, and it's kind of the point where it's like, I don't know anymore. Like, I don't know how I feel. I've seen great ideas turn out to be really bad, and then really bad ideas turn out to be good. So it's like, I have no idea. It's hard to really kind of talk about these things. And I mean, it's just, and to me, that's the problem. That's my biggest fear for Batman vs Superman. As much as I am, actually looking forward to seeing this movie and these characters finally sharing the screen together. That's in a not animated feature form. I'm just thinking you guys are pouring every single other character in them. And even though we're trying to copy the DC universe or the Marvel universe, Marvel didn't throw 50 characters into one movie at the very get-go. And to me, it just seems like it's going to be a recipe of disaster because with that many characters, that's not a lot of development time for each of them. So that's kind of scary. And, even though I would enjoy a female Robin, and I think, not a lot of people know there was a female Robin or is a female Robin, I think that's something that should definitely be. That would definitely be the one more, like you said, the priority character over these other ones.
Yeah, I have nothing else to say about it.
The last bit of movie news, and we'll move on, because most of this is all just casting stuff. I'll kind of go through them. If you feel the need to comment on any of them, please do. I guess that Joaquin Phoenix has said no to playing Doctor Strange. They're still looking at Benedict Cumberbatch, Colin Farrell, and Keanu Reeves. Hardy has been in talks to play Apocalypse in the new X-Men film. He's also in talks with Will Smith, or in talks to join the Suicide Squad film. But the one I want to talk about is, so we had the Ashton Kutcher. Did you see Jobs?
I did not actually end up seeing that.
Okay, yeah, I missed it too. But they are doing a film, Steve Jobs film, and now Christian Bale is being attached. Are you interested in this story at all? How do you feel about Christian Bale, and what do you feel about him playing Steve Jobs?
I think it could be interesting. I know originally he was the guy for it when David Fincher was supposed to direct it, which I think would have been exciting. And Fincher dropped out and was replaced by Danny Boyle, who I also think is an excellent director. Yep. And the script is by Aaron Sorkin, so I think this could turn out well. I personally don't have a lot of interest in Steve Jobs as a person or as a subject, but I think a movie directed by Danny Boyle and written by Aaron Sorkin and starring Christian Bale, whatever that movie's about, I would want to see it. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay. And that's going to wrap it up for movie news, as me and Josh got to vent our frustrations of, going to see superhero movies all the time, and, everyone that's talking about that. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's the first thing. What do you think about this superhero movie or this movie? I'm like, oh, well, there was this really great movie. No. What do you think about this next Marvel movie? I'm like, okay.
Right. I mean, it's the Batman versus Superman movie doesn't come out for another year and a half.
And it's the main focus of conversation.
Yes.
And it's even, I mean, I'm not sure about how people are addressing, people how to address you, or if you get a lot of questions when you tell people what you do, or, if people know you already from what you do you get more questions about Batman vs. Superman or the upcoming Star Wars film?
I think, honestly, people don't ask me that much about those movies. The thing people mostly ask me is, what's good that's out right now? And I always blank, which is terrible. Like, I don't know, something, probably. So I can't say. But, I mean, either of those subjects, the Batman, all the comic book movies, or the Star Wars movies, which I kind of feel the same way about Star Wars as I feel about Ghostbusters. Mm-hmm. I like them fine. I saw them when I was a kid, and I have revisited them only when is sort of necessary, because there were prequels that came out or they were re-released or whatever. But I really don't have strong feelings about Star Wars. So I think if someone asked me about either of those subjects, I would just say, whatever. Yeah. If you're excited, I'm glad. I hope the movies live up to your expectations.
That's awesome. I feel like for a Star Wars movie coming out, I would expect a lot more conversation about it, but it's the same. Not many people have brought that up to me. Way more about Batman versus Superman or things of that nature. So, yeah, I mean, most people, and a lot of, especially, even, it's funny because even my family, they're like, they don't even bother asking me what's good because they know whatever I like, they don't like. So, it's like, whatever. We had, I remember, it was some big family get together, and we got into this argument about Transformers 4, and I was like, you guys are nuts. I don't know how I was in this family, and so on and so forth. But, so moving on to now, me and Josh are going to get into an in-depth review of the Book of Life in Fury. So let's start off with the Book of Life. The Book of Life was originally called, I believe, Day of the Dead, and it was in early 2012, and it was produced by Del Toro, and then Real FX announced that they're going to be relating it in October, sometime later. Ended up becoming the Book of Life, and here we have a 3D animated film about multiple worlds and about two men, a musician at heart, but a bullfighter by day, and a soldier fighting for a war hero, fighting for the love of a woman. Josh Bell, what did you think of the Book of Life?
I did not like this movie, and I know you disagree with me, and it seems actually a lot of people disagree with me. I think this movie overall has gotten pretty good reviews. It made an okay amount of money over the weekend, and I think, like a lot of these animated movies, it's the kind of thing that parents will just take their kids to because it's there. Yeah. It has some bright colors, and it might shut your kid up for an hour and a half, so it's great. And I just thought, to me, the telling thing to me about this movie is that it starts out with this framing story where it takes place at a museum, and this group of kind of unruly or, faux unruly kids is showing up for this museum tour, and this tour guide at the museum is saying, hey, we're going to go to this special area of the museum and let me tell you this story. And so it already sets it up as sort of an obligation that these kids don't want to endure. And that's how our movie starts. And I felt that really set the tone for this movie. It felt like a very pedantic, let's learn about cultural diversity kind of thing, which is definitely not what it should be. I mean, as you said, it's produced by Guillermo del Toro, who is himself actually Mexican, and it celebrates this tradition that's very important in Mexico, and that has become actually very important here as we get more and more immigrants come to this country. I know in Vegas we have a lot of Day of the Dead celebrations around the city, and so I feel like it's rich source material that they could have handled in a less stilted, awkward, boring way. The love story that they set up, the love triangle, I thought was completely dull, predictable, uninteresting. I wasn't impressed with the animation until maybe the very end when they go into the underworld and there's some colorful, cool little stuff. And I was hoping for something like Guillermo del Toro's Nightmare Before Christmas, and instead I got Guillermo del Toro's My First Day of the Dead picture book, and I did not like it.
Wow. Oh man, tough to follow. I'm gonna have to start Fury so I can come off strong next time.
No, please. I know you liked it. So
no, I did. I really enjoyed the Book of Life. I myself have admitted very much that I am very much. There's things that just get me, and they always get me no matter what kind of form they are in. I really enjoyed the Book of Life because. To go back a few weeks, I was really excited for the box show. I'm a huge fan of animation and movies that are, mostly directed towards kids because they are usually, as Disney and Pixar and even now DreamWorks has kind of taught us, that, because I know Josh Bell, I don't think was a fan of How to Train Dragon 2, and I also love that movie.
Well, that movie, I will say, was better than the Book of Life. I thought it was a little dull, but it was better visually beautiful, and it had some well-drawn characters. I thought the plotting was not the best, but it was definitely better than the Book of Life, so I'll say that.
Okay.
Please continue.
Thank you. So, and I've always just been attracted to the kind of themes and things they talk about in kids' movies, and I've always enjoyed watching these movies with an audience of younger kids and kids of all ages, but so to me, I think this movie already kind of. Sorry, I've kind of lost my. So go back to Box Trolls. I was really excited for that movie, and I really didn't like that movie. I thought that movie was a really big disappointment. Josh, did you feel the same?
No, I like that movie a lot, actually. I thought that movie was really charming and was really visually inventive. I thought the story was. The pacing was a little off, but it was not as predictable as I would have imagined out of a movie like that. I think Laika, who is the studio that made that film, their previous films, Coraline and Paranorman, were better, but I like the Box Trolls a lot, and it made me excited to see what Laika does next. So we're definitely opposite on both of these.
Did you like Paranorman?
I love Paranorman. I love Coraline. I think Laika has done great stuff. Did you like Paranorman?
I love Paranorman. I think I like Paranorman more than I like Coraline. I like Coraline a little bit more visual standpoint, but I really, really love Paranorman. So that's good. Okay, I just wanted to see where we were, if we were going to be opposites on those two. Yeah, but I definitely loved Coraline because it has a Neil Gaiman, attachments, and I'm a huge fan of Sandman and all the things that he's done. So to me, that was like a big shoe in. I was like, oh, finally.
Yeah, so I agree. Coraline is great, and Henry Selick, who directed Coraline, of course, also directed The Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach, which are two of the greatest stop-motion animated movies.
Absolutely. But okay, so I was really disappointed in the Box Trolls, unlike Josh Bell. So maybe we went in different mindsets. And I was really hoping that Box Trolls was going to be, a visual to take away. You can't really discredit Box Trolls for its visuals at all, because they were amazing, and stop motion is an incredible, underused art as it is. But I kind of walked away very unattached to Box Trolls, and I walked into Book of Life kind of not knowing much. As I've kind of mentioned before, I really don't watch trailers. I kind of tried my best to avoid trailers to kind of go on things blind, and I really, really enjoyed the Book of Life. I thought that the use of music was at times, a little bit cheesy, but I thought the use of music was pretty well done. There's a moment in the film when our main character starts singing the Radiohead song "Creep," and I just thought that was just so clever because it was referenced just for the audience. It was funny. They use songs for comedy purposes. Then they have some really touching music, like songs like the Apology song, or the song that Manolo sings to his love on the balcony. As Josh said, it is very, very colorful, very vibrant. I really did enjoy the different worlds that we were brought into. I've read some people classify it as 3 worlds. I classified it as 4 because we have the museum world, their world, the Forgotten, and then the Remembered. So I don't know if whatever you wanted to say, but I thought every world was different. It had a different look and a different texture as far as, and as Josh said in the beginning, we get brought to this museum and everyone looks a bit strange, but they're not wooden characters where we go into the world of Manolo and Joaquin. They're wooden characters. And then we have the party fiesta, which, kind of the equivalent to a party heaven, Day of the Dead type place. And then we have the Forgotten, which is a very underworld-esque picture. I thought the characters looked very interesting. Off the top of my head, I cannot think of his name. He Zilbaba.
Oh, Zabalba.
Zabalba, thank you.
Yeah.
Played by Ron Perlman, who I just thought looked so awesome. I thought he had these red skulls for eyes. I thought they were just so cool to look at. Many of the characters I thought were just visually intriguing. But overall, the thing that I really enjoyed about this film was the themes, and I'm a big sucker for themes. And even if they are as cliched as possible, I like hearing good positive messages. So when I see them, I really enjoy it. And the fact that there's a female character who, kind of is at times more courageous than a bullfighter and a soldier. She is, kind of tries to stand on her own, doesn't want to be married off to be someone's housewife. I really, really enjoyed that. I enjoyed the theme of kind of creating your own story and not living in parents' shadows. Those are the things that I really enjoy in these kind of films. And I like films with good messages. I wouldn't say I was emotionally as attached as I was to the characters in How to Train Your Dragon 2. I mean, that movie really hit home for me, How to Train Your Dragon 2. This film, not as much as an emotional ride, but it definitely, I had a very fun time. The use of music, the themes that they put in there. And of course, like I said, the world is just so dazzling and just so awesome to kind of see. It definitely feels like a fiesta, if you will. It is a movie about love and death, and I absolutely loved it to death, unlike Josh Bell. So.
Well, that's totally, like I said, it seems to have gotten a lot of good reviews, and I'm sure families went to see it this weekend, and kids probably enjoyed the bright colors. I guess that's the best. I thought the music was terrible. That is one thing that I really disliked. I thought all the silly, like, mariachified versions of pop songs
I thought that was a little
were totally cringeworthy and pandering, and the original songs were not good either. So yeah, but I don't need to. I mean, it's an innocuous movie. I don't need to pile on.
Yeah, I did think there were some moments where there was a little bit of some lowbrow humor and some unnecessary type things that I didn't think were necessary for this movie, and it would have worked without. There were some like kind of just gross little humor jokes that I was like, what? But overall, I enjoyed the music. I mean, as again I've said many times, I'm a big sap. It's easy to get me going. And I just have to say, Josh, you are probably the most polite critic I've ever had conversations with, because once you do it, the moment most critics, when they get out of press screening, they start talking about what they think, and a critic will say, and there's always a critic quick to be like, no. Josh is always so polite, doesn't ever try to argue with me. Just says, you have your opinion, I have mine, and it's just he's so polite about it. But I know in his head he's probably, what is this guy thinking?
Well, I mean, I think it's opinions. I mean, that's inherently what it is. So unless you've misunderstood something or got a fact wrong about the movie or something like that, then all we can do is have a discussion. I don't think there's any value in me saying, oh, you're an idiot or something. Not that I think you're an idiot. Of course I don't. But I mean, there are critics who I think are idiots that we may encounter at screenings, and I keep my mouth shut about that. But anyway, that's not really something for us to discuss.
It's all politics. So yeah, I really enjoy. So, Josh, I didn't get a chance to pick up your review of Book of... Actually, no, I did. I just can't remember the stars you gave it, because I saw the review on Fury, and I was reading it, and it wasn't your review on Fury, but then I found your review on Book of Life. I think you gave it 2 out of 5, Book of Life?
Yeah, I gave Book of Life 2 stars.
Okay, so you didn't absolutely hate it, but okay. So Josh Bell gave 2 out of 5. You could find it, all of Josh Bell's work again at LasVegasWeekly.com. You could search his name. You can find all of his stuff. He posts about it on Facebook, facebook.com/JoshBellHatesEverything. And of course, JoshBellHatesEverything.com. So, Book of Life, a fun kids animated film, and we jump across to the next theater and we have something completely different. Josh, why don't you open up and talk about Fury, what it was about and how you felt about it?
Well, this is another movie that I think I did not like that you did like, and another case where I think most people have ended up agreeing with you that it seems to have gotten mostly positive reviews. I saw that it got a very good cinema score. So I'm in the minority on this, but I will say as a disclaimer, war movies are one of my bottom 3 least liked genres of movies.
Along with what?
Along with martial arts movies and social issue documentaries. I will say those are my least favorite kinds of movies.
I wasn't expecting the social issue documentaries.
Cannot stand social issue documentaries. So I do have a bit of a bias here that in order for me to enjoy a war movie, it has to kind of overcome. Not that there aren't war movies that I think are great or that I thoroughly enjoy, but I don't come into it with high hopes. And especially movies about manly men being manly at the expense of empathy and intelligence, which I think is kind of the hallmark of the career of David Ayer, who's the writer-director here, whose most recent film was Sabotage, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I thought was terrible. He also directed Street Kings, I believe, with Keanu Reeves, I want to say.
He did.
I'm not 100%. I may not be 100% correct on that.
No, you are. It's just funny because usually people say end of watch, and you were like, you went straight for the throat. You were like, he did Street Kings.
Well, okay. To be fair, I have actually not seen End of Watch, okay. I cannot give an opinion on that. But every movie I think that David Ayer has directed that I have seen, I have not liked. So those are all my biases going into this movie. That said, I thought this movie was extremely monotonous. I didn't think it was illuminating in its depictions of the horrors of war, which it really wallows in the grotesquerie of what's going on. I mean, the close-ups of guts and body parts, and I think to an excessive degree, which was something that Ayer did in Sabotage as well, which was not a war movie as a sort of a crime story, but similarly gory to an unnecessary degree. And to the point that it does offer some kind of story arc, it's a very cliched war movie story about the naive kid who comes in and he's all afraid and he doesn't know what to do, and then he freaks out, and then gradually he kind of bonds with the other guys and he becomes a man, and I just find that kind of story arc not only predictable and overused, but frankly bullshit. And that was kind of the way I felt about this movie going on. By the end of the movie, as I said when I was on the radio the other day, I was rooting for the Germans to kill them all so the movie would be over.
Okay. Oh man, that's great.
So but again, that's not the majority opinion on this movie.
So it was mostly the story that you found kind of the biggest problem with Fury.
I mean, the story, and again, I think the visual style, which is beautiful in a lot of ways, but it just wallows in the nastiness of it without any value. And the characters, I think, were mostly one-dimensional characters. Brad Pitt's performance, I thought was strong given what he had to work with. And there's moments where you see kind of the facade drop on that character and how hard it is for him to kind of hold everything together. And I appreciated those moments, but overall the characters didn't really do anything for me.
Now, okay, really quick to back up, what war films do you enjoy? Just so I could get an idea.
See, if I had prepared myself a list, I could have said.
I'm sorry.
I also, the one movie that I saw just recently, I mean recently as in maybe within the last several months that I'd never seen before, was The Bridge on the River Kwai, which I thought was absolutely phenomenal film. Mm-hmm. And it definitely gets into the dehumanization of war. That's a movie that doesn't depict battle as much as it takes place mainly in the prisoner of war camp. I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, and obviously it's a huge, big classic that everyone loves. But I had never seen it before, and I was just really wowed by that movie, by the scope of it, but also by the characters. I mean, Alec Guinness in that movie is just fantastic, and the kind of nobility that he presents in that movie that I think is something that a movie like Fury just fails to get across. So that's one off the top of my head that I think is a great movie.
All right. What about Apocalypse Now?
I don't like Apocalypse Now, but I will say that I have not seen Apocalypse Now in probably close to 20 years. So that was my opinion from then, and I might have a different opinion if I saw it again.
Okay, because Apocalypse Now is my favorite war film, because as very similar to you, war films aren't necessarily my go-to. They're not one of my favorites. I've never really kind of done the whole really think about what my least favorite genres are, but war was probably one of them. Just because the majority that I saw I wasn't really interested in. However, I really, really loved Apocalypse Now, and I think not the problem with Apocalypse Now, but the problem with Fury is that they're trying to kind of tell a story that Apocalypse Now, in my opinion, did better than any war film has done, and I think that will ever do. To tell the stories of what war can do to a man. I think Francis Coppola's Apocalypse Now really, really kind of says it, and it says it best. So Fury does try to kind of tackle that same theme in a sense, not as strongly, I don't think, but I don't think it does as nearly as well as Apocalypse Now. But I'm not the biggest war film fan either, and so going into Fury, I was kind of really unsure what to expect because just as from before you go to a movie, you have these movies that seem like they have a lot of elements that will work. And sometimes there are huge disappointments. And I was really kind of not sure how Fury was going to be. And as Josh mentioned, one of the main things that really struck out to me was the fact that this film was so graphic, so gory, and so concentrating on the brutality of things. And as Josh said, to not necessarily enhance story, or just kind of gets to a point where it's just like, okay, I get it, man. And just kind of gets a little bit too much. Where you have films like The Thin Red Line by Terrence Malick that has, intense war scenes, and then, we'll track a shot all the way to follow a bird, It doesn't kind of use that same story. The film, as Josh said, the film follows a young, naive boy who goes into this war to fight a battle that he never found himself fighting, and played by Logan Lerman, and we see his kind of transformation. My major problem with Fury was that I felt his transformation didn't really happen. I felt it was kind of rushed. I don't know if you feel the same, Josh, but I felt that, we have this great scene with Brad Pitt and him where he is forced to kill an SS soldier, and we see how traumatizing it is and how he really, was so against kill a human being that he actually says, kill me instead. And then it just happens. And as much as I would like to see a little bit more, I would have liked to see a lot more hesitation from him to still kill a man on his own. They kind of just rush in I believe in the next couple scenes, he starts shooting from the tank. And to me, it just kind of ruined that whole really beautiful transformation that could have taken place. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was saying, I think that the nature of that story arc being kind of bullshit, because it doesn't come off as anything other than the director pushing things in a direction of what he wants to convey, rather than telling you a story about a character who really goes on an emotional journey. And I think, to me, this is maybe what Ayer is all about, is this glorification of violent masculinity. And the one character in the movie who's reluctant to get on board with that, you got to push him on board with it as quickly as possible. So maybe I'm reading a little too much into that, but I do agree with you that it wasn't an entirely convincing journey for that character.
Okay. However, I did enjoy the movie for the most part because I thought the film had some really wonderful performances. As Josh Bell said, I really enjoyed watching Brad Pitt. The only problem I had with Brad Pitt's character was, as Josh said, he plays this fatherly teacher, kind of a fatherly character to these men, the band of brothers that were following this tank brigade. And when he is alone or when no one's looking, he kind of has these moments where he drops the facade. But it kind of never goes back. They do it a few times in the beginning, and it just kind of never feels like it goes anywhere. That never really kind of talks about that more, which I would have liked. I mean, everyone understands what he's doing. Everyone understands why he's doing it. But it just feels like they did it in the beginning a few times, maybe a little bit in the middle, but it just kind of never shows you that side of him. And I think that would have been a little bit better for the character as we reach towards the end of the film, where I don't want to get into spoilers, at least yet, because I have a question for Josh. I think Logan Lerman did a really great job as he kind of had to face these terrors and things like that. Though I had a problem with his arc and his story, I think he performed it very, very well. Also, a lot of people have kind of had a lot of controversy about Shia LaBeouf lately and had problems with him in his personal life and what he's been doing and so on and so forth. You know, I kind of always have to kind of put that to the side. I think I really enjoyed watching Shia LaBeouf in this film. I thought he was a very not so much interesting character, but I thought his performance really, because I tried to imagine his character on paper, and I kind of imagined Shia LaBeouf's performance of it, and I think he really brought something to it. Though, you know, he might not have, and he might have just read lines up and done it certain well. But in my opinion, I felt like he really kind of did that character differently than I think most actors would have approached. But that's just me. I think there are some really great moments of this film, and I think that it really does as Shia LaBeouf says, wait till you see what a man can do to another man. It tries to, in that same sense, follow what Apocalypse Now did in telling what the war can do to a man and how violent history is and all these things that, you know, is said and repeated to us throughout the film. But overall, at the end, I was moved and I was kind of attached to these characters. And though I had my issues with the film, because there are a lot of bumps, and I did overall enjoying the film. Though I kind of, as much as I enjoyed it and I felt attached, I didn't feel emotional as enough to a point where I would have a sense of loss if something were to happen to them, I don't think. But I was still intrigued by their connection and their chemistry, and I think that's what really enjoyed the film, as well as the themes of just, you know, what war could do to a person and what, the thought that, as Brad Pitt says in the film, we're not here for right or wrong, you kill him or he kills you. That kind of mindset, I think, was just kind of really interesting and caught my attention in Fury.
Yeah, it did not really catch my attention as much. No.
Okay, so overall, I really enjoyed Fury. I would say surprising, but I don't know how Josh does his ratings as far as how he thinks. But you know, people always ask me, if you rate a movie 4 out of 4, if I rate The Godfather 4 out of 4 stars, and I rate How to Train Your Dragon 2 out of 4 out of 4 stars. I don't think they're equally as good films. I just think that their purpose, their execution was perfect, or not, well, near perfect, because saying movie's perfect is kind of off, but I think some films deserve a perfect score. And so like what I'm trying to say here is I really enjoyed The Book of Life, and though The Book of Life nowhere near tackles the kind of reality and seriousness that Fury does, I like The Book of Life more as a film opposed to Fury. But not by much. I think they're both really good films. I think they're both really worth seeing, as Josh feels the opposite.
Yeah, I think they're both not good and not really worth seeing. And I didn't write a review of Fury in Las Vegas Weekly because we had Mike D'Angelo review it. But I would give it the same rating as Book of Life. I would give it a 2 out of 5 star rating.
Very interesting. So now, if you haven't seen either of these films, it's up to you to go see who you agree with. And let us know. You could tweet me at Chasing Cinema or tweet Josh at Signalbleed, right?
Yes, that is correct.
At Signalbleed. But before we wrap up here, I just have one quick question. If you've not seen Fury, please do not. Please, if you don't want, at least if you care about spoilers, don't listen anymore. Or fast forward in about 2 minutes, because I just want to talk to them about the very ending really, really quick. So spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. This is my warning to you. If you've not seen Fury, fast forward or come back to this part of the podcast when you have seen it. If you don't care, like you're like Louie and you don't care about spoilers, more power to you and you can listen up. Josh, how do you feel about the very ending of Fury? And when I ask that, I mean the SS soldier, or, you know, they called them SS soldiers, but the soldier showing mercy on Logan Lerman's character. What did you feel about that? Did you think that kind of negated the themes of the film? Do you think that enhanced that? What do you think that was trying to say? How did you read it? Did it affect you? Did it enhance it? Did you just think it made the movie more powerful, less powerful? Well, I know you didn't find it powerful, but
yeah. I mean, by the time that moment came along, I don't think anything really would have convinced me to be on board with that movie. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, to me, it came across as a little disingenuous because the movie hounds that point over and over again for more than 2 hours about how brutal everything is, and all it is killing each other. You kill him, he kills you, and then to have that moment felt a little disingenuous. Not to say that couldn't have really happened, but especially after we've spent the last, I don't know, what is it, 20, 30 minutes of the movie just brutally murdering each other back and forth. That moment to me sort of rang a little false. Yeah. Like you have to have this one ray of sunshine moment at the end of the film because it's a Hollywood production. I honestly, as it was leading up to that point, I was wondering, is this movie going to end with all of the main characters dead? Which of course it didn't. And I think as a big Hollywood movie that stars Brad Pitt, it would probably have been tough to end it that way. But I think it maybe would have been more honest, given what had happened all the way leading up to that, if the movie had in fact ended with Logan Lerman getting unceremoniously shot in the head by a German soldier.
I agree. As going into this film, I honestly thought about halfway through, I was like, I don't think any of these guys are going to get out. So it actually really surprised me. Granted, as you said, Brad Pitt, major studio picture, to let all the characters that'd be quite sad, but I always think to me, I figured until I saw Fury that war movies are always kind of the exception. War movies, it might not be that shocking because in most war movies, our war heroes end up falling or going back, kind of passing away, dying or whatever. Though some movies are happier endings, but nonetheless, I kind of really had issues with that part just because, as you said, it feels kind of backhanded to the themes that they were talking about, the entire theme of the film. And I sat on that for a while and I was thinking, and trying to think of it in different lights, like maybe, because as much as I thought it backhanded the films, it felt very Hollywood and it didn't feel like it kind of belonged to that movie, but I was trying to find an excuse for it to kind of make it, to kind of see why David Ayer would put that in, though if it was his choice or not, I don't know. But I really tried to kind of think about ways that it could have been more for positive film. But overall, I walked away still kind of saying, man, that just didn't feel. If I was taking an exam and you said, how does Fury end? A, B, C, or D? And this answer was A. I would have not selected A, to simply put. Like, this was the farthest thing that I would have imagined this movie ending on. I could have seen them all dying. I could have seen them, getting down to the, finally kind of, because it seems like they pretty much kill everyone, almost. There's probably maybe 20 soldiers left out of the 400 supposedly. Or, Brad Pitt dying with his protege, this kid that he's kind of taken under his wing. And we have that nice moment with him and Brad Pitt towards the very, very end before Brad Pitt dies. And
after Brad Pitt has been shot like 10 times, but he still has time to make a nice little have a heart-to-heart moment. Yeah, that was another ridiculous moment. Again, disingenuous after we've spent the whole movie seeing this horrific extreme violence and how people die in an instant. But Brad Pitt, man, he gets to have his last final moment, even though he's been shot many times.
His hair unmoved, and he still looks pretty as ever.
Yes.
So yeah, it just kind of felt really out of place, and I was just trying to put the piece in the puzzle and say maybe, but overall, the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, it just didn't make sense to me. It doesn't work. And of course, to the studios, it makes perfect sense. We have to have a good guy live, but to me and to you, as people who watch these films and expect stories to kind of to come full circle and make always sense, it just kind of felt odd. Really quick before we wrap up, Josh, I've probably taken too much of your time already, but how did you feel about the dinner scene? A lot of people have talked about that, and a lot of people have brought that to my attention, feeling like it didn't fit in the movie, or it did. What were your thoughts on that scene?
Well, I think that's one scene where maybe Ayer is trying to reach beyond just the brutality of war. I think there's a lot of problematic elements to that scene because he's looking to, I don't know. Logan Lerman's character goes off and has sex with the German girl, and the way the movie portrays it is sort of a positive thing. She feels good about it. She's happy. He's happy. And then it's very tragic when she gets blown up later and he's very sad. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to me. It was hard to feel good about his connection with that girl, where it's clearly the whole thing is coerced in that these women are deathly afraid of these American soldiers with good reason, because they've just come into their town and killed practically everyone and blown stuff up. And so I don't know. I think that scene, more than other scenes in the movie, is reaching for something a little more ambiguous, a little maybe more ambitious than the basic just war is hell and men have to man up in order to deal with it. But I think the manliness and the macho tone of the movie kind of obliterates the ambiguity that should come across in that scene.
Yeah, I mean, I felt, yeah, I guess I'd have to really kind of agree with you. I felt like at times I thought that scene could have been something really, really important, but overall I didn't think it really kind of came off that way. Because, I mean, there are people who just felt like that scene totally didn't belong. I definitely felt that it was trying to be something much more, but it didn't necessarily come off that way.
Yeah, I mean, I would have rather seen a movie full of scenes like that than the movie that was actually, that we got.
Shown, yeah. Well, if you haven't seen Fury and Book of Life, go see them and see who you agree with. You might not agree with either of us. You might agree with one of us. It doesn't matter. I just had a great conversation with Josh Bell. If you want to find more of Josh Bell's work, please go to facebook.com/JoshBellHatesEverything or joshbellhateseverything.com. You could follow him on Twitter at SignalBleed. As he said, at Elixir on October 27th, he's going to be hosting a screening of Night of the Living Dead. He is, like I said earlier, a class act, one of the nicest critics I have talked to and spoken with, and I consider him a good friend. Josh, thank you so much for taking your time out to be on the podcast this evening. And,
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course, anytime, sir. If you ever want to be on the podcast, you let me know. And as to say, we always want you to come back. Hope to talk to you very soon. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jacob Toronto. Josh, thank you so much for coming back on the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please continue chasing cinema.